Hello, I'm just going to run through this 4-mark question because I don't think that we've tackled this 4-mark question yet. It was on the second part of the walking talking mock, which we will get to. But I thought it was unfair of me to ask you how to answer this question without a little bit of explanation on how to answer the question. So this 4-mark question is slightly different from my 3-mark question. It asks a little bit more of you in terms of analysis, and it's not just looking for this AO1. So it's not just looking for your knowledge and understanding. It's also asking for a little bit of analysis as well, which is your AO2, really, the application of, hang on a minute, let me just double check. Yeah, your ability to apply knowledge of sociological concepts and to, explain them and analyze. So it's asking more than just knowledge and understanding. Okay, it's also asking for analysis here as well, in the format of your explanation. Okay, so this question here is asking for you to identify and explain only one factor, so you don't need to identify all the factors, one factor that may have led to changes in the pattern of fertility in the UK over the last 30 years, 4 marks. Now, the reading I gave you actually laid this out really well for you. It gave you all the factors in bullet points. You could have had economic factors, labour market uncertainty would have been a good one, later marriages, women's increased participation in higher education and paid employment, which is what we're going to do today. It's our model answer, or the increased use of effective birth control methods. Any of these, you just need to choose one of these points would have been a sufficient factor that may have led to changes in the pattern of fertility in the UK over the last 30 years. But you only need to choose one for this 4-mark question. Okay, so there's only 4 marks, so it's unfair of them to ask for an essay format. And here's the structure that we are going to follow here. So it's PEEL, so your point, explanation, example or evidence, analysis, and link. Okay, and again, I'm only going to look at the top mark band with you as a class, because again, you are a very high ability class, and I think lots of you will be looking for these full 4 marks for these questions here. And I think all of you are very capable of getting this. So I'm only really going to talk to the top mark bands for you here. So you need to make sure that a relevant factor is selected, and that's really your point. And I went through some of the points that you could have chosen. I'm actually going to talk about here higher education and employment rates increasing for women over the last 30 years is the reason why fertility rates have declined. Okay, so relevant factor. And then you need to have an appropriate, detailed and well-developed explanation of relevant sociological theories, concepts, evidence, and methods offered with good application to the content. That's your AO2. And that's really your explanation and analysis. This section here is what gets you the AO2 marks. Here, okay, and this link here is just making sure that you're keeping to the question, and it's just a sentence at the end. So we can, I've already identified here that the factor, so tick that mark, it's already achieved here. So one factor which may have led to changes in the pattern of fertility in the UK over the last 30 years is women's increased participation in higher education and employment. And now we move on to our explanation and analysis, which I've highlighted in blue here. So, for example, the feminist movement in the 1960s has led many women to reject traditional ideas of the woman as the main caregiver and homemaker. This has been supported by equal opportunity legislation. Analysis. This is important because women now have a greater range of options to choose from and have increasingly, over the last 30 years, entered into the workforce. And I could perhaps make this more specific to the question. So if I was to criticize my own work, I would say enter into the workforce instead of having staying at home and having children. Okay, so perhaps could have linked it a little bit better there. And then, so that this section here would really be our AO2 aspect here. And this paragraph has shown that decline in fertility in the UK is because of women's participation in education and employment. So I'm just linking back to the question there. Okay. And so this would be a top band mark. This would be 4 out of 4. It's identified the relevant factor, and it's given appropriate and well-detailed and developed explanation of relevant sociological theories, concepts, evidence, and methods offered with good application to the context. Okay, yeah. So when it's talking about the context, it's talking about the UK over the last 30 years. And I've made sure that I have addressed this in my answer as well as being able to unpick why fertility has changed over the last 30 years and given specific detailed knowledge through identifying things like equal opportunities, or giving examples of things like equal opportunities legislation, main caregiver, feminist movements. We're using all this sociological language here as well. And we're making sure it's correct. We know that the second wave feminist movement was in the 1960s. So hopefully that gives you some explanation of a 4-mark question. Feel free to copy this model answer down if you don't feel comfortable and answering, and that's totally okay because we haven't done this before. So feel free to write this model answer down, and maybe the structure would be useful as well. So maybe you could write at the side point, explanation, analysis, and link at the side of the model answer so that you know. Okay, I hope that was helpful. If there's any questions or queries, then please feel free to contact me.